Hey, Rose. So I wanted to share a realization that I just had the other day while I was sitting in the cafe. I was looking out the window and I saw a little bird just sitting out on the street looking for some food, and a bus started barreling towards it. And that little thought popped in my head, like, "Oh man, I wonder what's going to happen. Is the bird going to see it in time? Or is it going to be a kind of sad catastrophe?" The bird saw the bus and it flew out of the way. And as many birds do, they've become quite acclimated to the risks of living in the city. But if you think about it from the point of evolution, it gets quite fascinating because obviously buses did not exist during most of the evolution that has led up to birds as we see them today. And yet the world keeps changing around them, imposing new threats. So, as an example, there are other technologies that birds don't deal as adeptly with. Windows is a good example. Birds regularly collide with car windows or skyscraper windows because they just can't see them. And they think that they can fly through them. Or an even better example might be plastic bits. There's some birds that think that plastic is food. They see the color, they see the shape, and their brain tells them, eat that. Now, when it comes to a physical risk, something in your environment that is dangerous to you, you can learn theoretically to avoid it. But with an animal as simple as a bird that has such a simple brain structure, if something happens that essentially disrupts the brain's processing of information and motivates you to do something that's bad for you, like eating plastic, that bird's pretty screwed. There isn't much that's going to happen that's going to allow that bird to adapt to the situation. Its brain is telling it, eat this. Okay, you can see other examples in the animal kingdom, like sea turtles that pursue plastic bags as food because they look like jellyfish. And you look at the pace of technology change and how it affects the animal kingdom. It made me wonder, how am I being affected? I'm an animal too. So what's happening in my world that my brain is not processing effectively, at least the mammalian part of my brain is not processing effectively as a threat? And this got me thinking, right? Now, we've talked quite a bit about how our mammalian brain, what we call the paleo mammalian brain, is basically ruled by neurotransmitters, and that what we often interpret as emotion is really the feeling of specific chemicals that drive our behavior. So those like serotonin, which encourages us to be at the top of the pack, or at least be accepted by the pack. If your serotonin is low, you feel like you've been ousted from your tribe. Or what about oxytocin, the drive to pair bond and be close to somebody, and the feeling that once, if they leave your world, that you feel this huge disruption to yourself emotionally. Dopamine, which encourages you to pursue things that your brain thinks is good for you, which is more or less the effect that the birds are experiencing when they see plastic bits. They're like, look, bright red, that must taste good. All right, so when you look at this objectively, you can see that the pace of technology and the things that are surrounding us in our world sometimes bypass our ability to make good, rational, healthy decisions. And it encouraged me to do an inventory of the risks in my life, the risks that I know of in that affect human behavior in ways that we don't automatically see as a danger. Great examples: alcohol, gambling, nicotine, caffeine, right? Pornography, fast food. Is that really food? It's not plastic, but there's actually plastic in it, right? Look at the ingredients of McDonald's. Go on this websites. It's amazing what's in French fries. It's not that much potato. Or at least there's a lot of stuff in there that's not potato, which has no business being in a French fry. And yet our brain says, hey, that's food. Not only is it food, that's good food. I should go for that. We want it. Our brain tells us to pursue it. Now, this is the problem as humans, is that with the invention of money and the concept of profit motive, we have other humans that are motivated to take advantage of basic human mammalian tendencies in service of their profit motive. And so we are sold fast food, we are pushed pornography, nicotine, alcohol, advertising is everywhere, social media, right? All of this is hijacking that innermost part of your brain. And sometimes, without conscious awareness, our neo-mammalian brain, the human rational part of our thinking, does not recognize it as a danger. And I think we definitely see, we know what too much alcohol can do. We know what recreational drug addiction and abuse can do. Pornography, there's a whole movement towards no fap because of the dangers and risks of sexual addiction and of how it affects the relationships between men and women. There's a great video, if you haven't watched it. It sort of explores the extreme end of this spectrum of what happens when you can manufacture the fantasy of a sexual partner that is absolutely your perfect ideal, like a robot that looks better than any real girl you've ever seen. What's going to happen to the human race? What's that going to do for the reproductive progress of our species? What's the real impact there? And it gets a little scary. The video is called Don't Date Robots, and it's done by the producers of Futurama. It's quite funny, and yet at the same time, it's kind of scary as shit when you think about how easily our brains are fooled into not being able to tell the difference between something that's real and good for us, real and good for survival of the species, and just pretend. Okay? Now, things get even more interesting when you think about fixing this problem, because humans have seen technological advances in the past that we've realized are harmful to us. Tobacco and alcohol are great examples. Drugs, recreational drugs, are great examples. And the government has essentially tried to protect us from these through legislation, law enforcement, the drug war. Prohibition was a great example. So prohibition didn't work, right? The government made alcohol illegal, but alcohol still flowed. It just went behind closed doors and into cellars. But it didn't stop it. So no matter how good the government's intentions are, you cannot legislate these risks away from ourselves. The only way to protect ourselves from these risks is to take a personal responsibility for what's happening to us. And that means being very aware and very almost judgmental about what we allow into our lives and know why. What do I put into my body as food, and why? Do I know it's food? What's the risk of it? When it comes to sexual contact, is porn equal to sex? In what way? How is it not? What does this do to my connections? How does this affect me in other ways in terms of energy level and self-respect and my connection with women? What about alcohol? Does it add to my life? Do I really need that to feel socially competent? Is gambling really going to make me rich, or does it just feel like it might make me rich? All these things are very important questions to ask. And as I sat in this cafe and looked at this bird in its now safe perch on a lamppost, I thought, I only hope that I'm as lucky to see the bus before it comes.